So, hello everyone. I am here with Bob McGannon. He's an expert in intelligent disobedience. Uh, he's from Noosa Heads in Queensland, Australia. Bob, how are you today?
I'm very well. And yourself, Mario?
Yeah, can't complain, can't complain. Thank you very much. Good. What is it exactly? Can you tell us in a few short minutes what it is you do?
So I basically do leadership training and project management training and consulting. After university, I worked for 18 years for IBM, running a lot of different technical projects and as a general manager for a number of technical related outsourcing engagements. I left IBM in 2000, started my own company doing project management training and consulting. So I was going back and forth between training people on project management and in leadership, or actually running projects as a senior project manager or program manager. So I would go back and forth between the training element and the actual consulting delivery element and helping our clients.
All right.
And I sold that business a couple of years ago. And then you've already talked about intelligent disobedience. I wrote that book and have been doing leadership workshops related to that concept, which I know we're going to talk about.
Exactly. That was actually going to be my next question. I hear you have a story about intelligent disobedience and how to apply it in the workplace or personal life, maybe. What can you tell us about that?
So let me just give you a definition and sort of a light version of it. Mm-hmm. Intelligent disobedience is not a phrase I came up with. It actually comes from the world of seeing eye dogs. You take 18 months to train a seeing eye dog how to obey, and then you spend the next 12 to 18 months teaching it when and how not to obey to make sure that it and its master stay safe. So if its master asks him to cross the street, there's an electric car coming by that its master can't hear because they're extraordinarily quiet. Mm-hmm. The dog needs to disobey its master's command. Take that into the concept of leadership. Businesses have a tendency to create business processes and procedures and rules. They are designed to either produce or protect the outcomes that they want to produce, want to generate. But every once in a while, there's going to be an exception. Let's say it's 2% of the time, right? Those procedures are not going to get the outcome that they are intended to generate. So what do? Well, in my premise, the best thing to do is to bend the rules or break the rules, right? And get the outcome you want, but not comply with the process that you're expected to use to do it. So that is the context of intelligent disobedience. I'm going to tell you a business story associated with this. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we call it rules or procedures. Sometimes it just may be cultural norms in an organization, and that's what this story is about. And this story appears in my book, Intelligent Disobedience, as well. It's a gentleman named Stefan. Stefan is a project manager, and he is working on a project, actually a program of work with 4 other project managers and a program manager overseeing the whole thing. And he's actually in the United States military. And he and his team were getting some emails from the Pentagon, where, the heads of the U.S. military are officed in just outside of Washington, D.C. And they're asking a lot of questions about this program of work and about the project. And they weren't good sounding questions. They were questions like implying they were questioning the purpose of the program of work they were working on. So they were all pretty concerned, but they were just answering the questions. And then one day they got the email that they were all fearing that said, we've asked some questions, we've got your answers. We think we want to deploy the funds that we're giving to you elsewhere because we've got, higher priority projects. Please stop, what you're doing, and we will determine what your next assignment is. Well, the team was pretty devastated, and they basically all went home, except for my friend Stefan. Stefan thought, this is just wrong. They just didn't quite get it. We were telling them, we were answering the questions that they gave us, but that wasn't necessarily what they needed to know. So he wrote a very detailed email back to his senior leaders. I mean, we're talking about his commanding officer, and one above that. and said, look, you've sent these questions. We have answered these questions. I understand that you have large prioritization decisions to make, and they're not easy, and your job is not easy. But if I was in your position, this is what I would want to know about this project that I'm working on. And he just gave them, a set of information. He said, and these are the questions that I would have asked. And he put those questions and the answers to those questions in, and he sent this email off to the Pentagon. Well, the next day he gets a call from the Pentagon asking him to get on an airplane from where he's at and go to the Pentagon immediately. And he's thinking, oh my gosh, right? I'm in trouble, right? Because you don't necessarily escalate a decision like that, right? Now note, in his email, he just said, this is information I think you need, and proposed questions and the answers to those questions, and thanked them for their time at the end. That's it. He didn't ask for them to restore the program or his role or anybody else's role. He just gave them more information. But it was a little bit of a different approach, a bit of intelligent disobedience, because that's not normally done in the United States military. So he gets called to the Pentagon, and he's wondering what's going to happen, and he walks in, and to make the story shorter and more concise here, he met with his senior officer, his commanding officer, and his commanding officer, which has 3 levels of commanding officer above him. And in the end, they actually restored the program, added some scope to it, and made him the program manager.
Okay.
Because of the insight that he provided, and the confidence that he provided in saying, this is what it is that I think you would want to know and want to understand. And then, having the courage to be able to do something a little different, but not too far from the cultural norm that he was rejected. I think it's a great example of intelligent disobedience, particularly because, like I said, in this email, he did not ask for anything. Mm-hmm. He just provided a situation. And it's a really good thing to do in leadership in any case, to provide a situation where the people that you are working for have perspective and the ability to be able to respond and make really conscious management decisions about what it is that's going on in their organization. And Stefan did that, I think, quite with a great deal of crafty nature, and was very clever in the way he did it.
So couldn't this have gone terribly wrong?
Yes.
Why
it absolutely could have. I don't think intelligent disobedience is something that you can do without having some courage, because you're going to break the rules or some cultural norms. I think in his case, he was very, very concise. He understood the nature of the decisions that his superiors had to make, so he was tailoring the information towards something that he believed that they needed, and he was very accurate in that. They appreciated having that information, right? If he went on some sort of a rant, or if he actually did this with a motivation to ask for anything, I think it would have considered, him criticizing his superiors, criticizing his senior leaders, which is not necessarily received particularly well in the United States military, or in most militaries around the world, to be honest with you. So he was providing really concrete, relevant information.
So is intelligent disobedience, is it about disobeying processes or people? Or can it be either?
It can be a number of different things. I think it's, as I say, it's bending rules, breaking rules, or doing things that are against the norm or against the organizational culture. And I say organizational culture, not country culture or geographic culture, because let's take, here in Australia, we have, a really small technology company, and they're taking risks all the time. It's like, Google can change their search parameters for an hour and watch what the results are, and then keep them or change them back, right? And learn a lot of information. But if you're managing the electrical power grid, power distribution grid, you can't do those sorts of changes really quickly and see what happens, because you might cut off the power supply to the hospital, right? So there's given cultures and expectations within organizations, and I think part of what made Stefan so successful is he understood the cultural norms and how far he could push them with what it is that he did. And in your case, when you're talking about What is it? Is it people? Is it process? It depends on the nature of where you are looking to engage in some form of disobedience, whether it's actually intelligent or not.
Well, being disobedient is something that comes natural to me. It's the intelligent part that I'm concerned about.
I've struggled with this too. I've struggled with this too. As I tell people, sometimes I only open my mouth to change feet.
So another thing that came to my mind is when we're going to apply intelligent disobedience in our life, how can we identify a situation in which this is required or even maybe wanted, or where it can be beneficial to a company?
Sure. I think the basis of the definition of intelligent disobedience is really fundamental here, is that you are creating an outcome that the business wants or expects.
Mm-hmm.
But following the rules or standard processes is not going to generate this outcome in this instance. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't go to work thinking I'm going to be intelligently disobedient today. I don't. I go in, I see a certain situation where that procedure is not going to yield that mm-hmm. outcome. And like I said, it falls into the 2%. Mm-hmm. In those instances, then I'm going to engage in intelligent disobedience, right? If I've done my homework and I know enough about the organization and the culture and the client and the outcomes, then I'll do that. Otherwise, I'm going to be asking other people, or I'm going to say, wait a minute, try to do some investigation, propose other alternatives. Mm-hmm. And in that is a statement that I haven't made, but I've implied. Intelligent disobedience, and the way I've defined it and written about it in my book and put on the videos, is not for personal gain. It's for the objective of the business and the organization that you're working in. Now, you may get personal gain as a secondary outcome of that. Mm-hmm. Because they say, wow, that was a really smart thing for you to do, to change that process, whatever, to get that outcome. Thank you. So you may get kudos for it, but it's not something you're doing for personal gain primarily. It is for the organization's intent. It's the intent for the organization.
Right. So if there was something that people could take from intelligent disobedience, if there was something that would stick with them after watching this interview, what would you want that to be?
A lot of people will view their job as following the process. Their job is to run this process, but a process is only there to create an outcome. Mm-hmm. So I would say, think in terms of their job being to create outcomes, and that the process is a tool to get you there. Mm-hmm. And understand the nature. And if you don't understand, ask questions. Understand the nature of how you might have some wiggle room, some variability, to still generate those outcomes for your business in those instances where the process doesn't work or won't work. So I'm saying consider valuing outcomes over compliance. Now, if you're doing something like creating a vaccine for COVID, there is a very, very regimented process to do that. That is probably not a process that in any instance you want to change, right? So I say this with those caveats and say, understand the environment and where you're in. Mm-hmm. But it really is looking at, is the process more important than the outcome? And should you be valuing outcomes versus just the compliance with the process?
All right. So thank you very much for your story and for this interview. We are going to do a second story actually after this one. So if anyone's interested, I'm sure you'll find that as well. For people that are more interested in what you have to say, I found an interesting video of a presentation you once did 3 years ago in Australia. If you're going to look up Bob McGannon and intelligent disobedience, for those that are more interested, that will be able to find it on YouTube then. Thank you very much, Bob McGannon. I will now stop.
Thank you very much, Mary. I appreciate the time to speak with you.